Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are here. We are live. It is time for week 4. So, how are we feeling? The NFL, I'm just going to adjust myself here so the camera's a little different. The NFL has got a lot of us feeling a certain kind of way, I would say, through the first 3 weeks. Um it's good. It's good because it's ultra competitive and it makes it very difficult to predict, which is fun. But it's also like I think we'd appreciate it if it was like a little less chaotic. Just a little bit, not a lot, just a little bit. Just the teensiest bit less chaotic than it is. But beggars can't be choosy, and we go with what we got. And what we got is the greatest football league, or at least the largest football league in the world, giving us a whole lot of unpredictability through the first 3 weeks of the season. So, as always, we are going to fire up our audio recorder. Wonderful, wonderful. And make sure that it's using the right thing. And it is. And we'll do this, even though it's pointless. We're going to do it anyway. And we're going to start our recording. And that looks like it's doing wonderful things. And we come back over here. Got a couple people in the chat already right from the jump. We've got Chad from Regina, Saskatchewan A. He's 30 of 48 picking the game so far this season, which seems like a miracle. Question: do some quarterbacks think they are good? that's that's a wonderful question, Chad. It really is. I'm going to look. I have no experience being a professional football gridiron quarterback. I know that's going to shock you. I'm going to guess that if you're on an NFL roster or an NFL practice squad, I'm going to guess you probably think you're pretty good at football. And chances are you probably are. There's only like 64 of those jobs in starters or immediate backups. Let's go like 128 of those jobs in the NFL if you really want to go to like fourth stringers. So I'm willing to bet they probably think they're pretty good. Does that mean they are? Not necessarily, but I'm willing to bet they probably think they're pretty good. But that's a very unique question that I've never been asked before. So I always appreciate the unique questions. All right. Chad, I see you're still in the chat. Before we get started, or anybody that's in the chat, can you just let me know how the audio sounds? Now I'm gun shy from a couple of weeks ago, and I just want to make sure that I'm coming through okay and it sounds clear and clean. Uh, Sounds good? Beautiful. Chad, I appreciate that very much. Let's get ourselves rolling here for week 4 in the NFL. LA Rabbit is in the chat now. What's up, LA? Thank you so much for coming out. Appreciate you. So, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. In 5, 4, 3, what's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, and welcome to week 4 of my weekly NFL football pick show for the 2024 NFL season and postseason. And as I was just saying on the preamble on the stream, oof Marone, this season has given us so much craziness already, and it's only 3 weeks old. The second consecutive week where 8 betting underdogs in 16 games not only covered against the spread, but won their games outright. The second consecutive week that has happened. So here's the deal. This, like, when I say Vegas doesn't know what it's doing, that doesn't come from nowhere. This year, any like when the conditions can exist that half of the teams that are underdogs that are not the favorites to win a game still win the game outright in multiple weeks. In a lot of those cases, the wrong team is the favorite. And it's starting to feel increasingly obvious in those instances when the wrong team is the favorite. I think we have at least one such instance of that this week, if not more. And we'll talk about them when we get to them. But like these are instances where the wrong team is the favorite. And there's been at least a half dozen of them to this point in the season already. And again, we're going to talk about them as we go. Now, in terms of picking the games straight up against the spread over under from last week, struggled straight up again. My second straight week of 7-9, which has me 4 games under 500 on the season at 22-26. This is uncharted territory for you, boy. I'm not used to being under 500 against the spread. Like in individual weeks, sure, it'll happen. But to be 4 games under 500 to this point in the season as a whole, this is uncharted territory for me. But again, it's been a very unpredictable opening to the season. So I guess it's a little understandable. Against the spread and over under, I actually had a pretty successful week. Against the spread, I was 10-6. I'm now 6 full games over 500 on the season at 26-20-2. And on the totals, I was a little above 500 there as well at 9-7, now 24-23-1 on the season as a whole. Also interesting, obviously, I've been keeping tabs on myself for the kind of spotlight picks that I do, which are like the primetime games as well as the Packers game. I'm like 5, what is it? I think it's 5-1-1 against the spread on Sunday and Monday night. And I think I'm like 5-2 straight up or something like that. So Sunday and Monday nights, I've been killing it so far this year. The rest of the week, it's been a little hit and miss. Let's take a peek at the Bridgewater's finest pick'em pool for season 13 of this show. I'm still in 25th place in that pool out of 34. Only 202 of 408 possible confidence points, which is kind of a reflection of the fact that I'm under 500 on the season. I've only brought in 49.6% of the confidence points. So again, obviously I have a ton of work to do in terms of those picks. And I only brought in 56 of 136 possible confidence points in week 3. That's just barely above 41%. It's not good. Obviously, I have a ton of work to do there. Shout out to our week 3 winner and remaining our overall leader, Tyler's Picks. And I actually just found out that Tyler's Picks, I kind of thought I knew who it was, but it turns out it's Tensa from the Ante & Co. Dynasty Fantasy Football League. So shout out to Tensa for winning week 3, bringing in 73 of 136 points for just under 54%. So again, that's a reflection of the entirety of the week. It was a difficult week on all of us making picks. Tyler has 266 of 408 possible confidence points for just over 65% on the season. Andrew Warren in the chat, before I head back to work, what is your beverage you're drinking for the week? So the bevy choice today is I've got my water, of course, and my other bevy is some blueberry juice. So got to keep the throat active here for the. That's a bad way to put that. Got to keep things feeling good for the next hour or so. Chad also says I'm thinking too hard. Can't stop, won't stop. You're probably fairly accurate in saying that, but we're going to take a peek now into Fantasy Corner, which is, of course, brought to you by the Dynasty Trade Calculator. And if you are like me and have adapted a lot of your fantasy football playing to Keeper, Dynasty, long-term fantasy football, the Dynasty Trade Calculator is for you. My affiliate link is down in the description below. And for as little as a cup of coffee, you can gain access to one of the absolute best tools available to you online for Keeper, Dynasty, long-term fantasy football. We're talking about player rankings, trade evaluations, podcasts, a ton of great experts. And look, it has helped me win championships in the past, and it can help you win championships as well. The Dynasty Trade Calculator is the biggest key to my fantasy football success. I've been having a ton of it this year, but overall, my fantasy football success. You want to check out the affiliate link that I have down below in the description. So, in my 8 fantasy football teams in week 3, I was a little bit underwater, unfortunately. Only went 3-5 across my 8 teams, and I'm 2 games under 500 on the season, overall at 11-13. Best ball, one of my 3 best ball teams, is still running in first place. Unfortunately, it's not my money league. My money league, unfortunately, I'm down in 9th, I believe, out of 10 teams. But in my defense, uh, Cooper Kupp is on that team. He's hurt. Isaiah Pacheco's on that team. He's hurt. So with best ball, you can't adjust the lineups. So you're kind of running with what you got. And I've got a number of key injuries, unfortunately, on that team. Now, in my 2 dynasty fantasy football leagues, we start with the professionals. I actually lost the matchup last week against Cat, which was a matchup I was projected to win. I came into Monday night with a lead, but a Keon Coleman touchdown reception, as well as some points from a number of individual defensive players, as well as Evan McPherson. I just couldn't hold on Monday night. Cat gets the win there by a couple of points. That moves me to 1-2 on the season. And I did lose in the Ante and Co dynasty to Chris, although that matchup I think was actually a little bit closer than it was supposed to, because Chris has an absolute hoss of a fantasy football team in that league. It's an incredible team. That drops me to 0-3, trying to defend a championship in that league, but I'm still looking for my first win. I got week 4 matchups against Holly as well as Emil in both of those leagues. Both of those are currently projected as wins for me. So I'd be getting off the schneid in Ante and Co. and evening my record back up at 2-2 in the professionals if things fall that way. So I keep looking down at my phone because I've got a bunch of notifications going off, and it's like, sorry folks, I'm live. I cannot help you. So from here, as always, I want to take this opportunity to remind you that if you go to the description of this live stream, of the VOD, of the podcast version of the show, wherever you interact with this show, you're going to find all my results from last week. You're going to find my straight up against the spread and over under plays for week 4 in the NFL. You're going to find information on joining the Bridgewater's Finest Pick'em Pool for season 13 of this show. You're also going to find information on joining the NFL YouTube Prognosticators Facebook page, where we talk football all week long. Ton of great prognosticators and great content is available to you on that page. And before we get into our game picks here for week 4, let's take a peek into the chat. Martin's here, says he's going to be monitoring. He's at work. Let's see. We answered Andrew's thing about my drink. LA Rabbit is laughing at me, I assume, about the throat comments. Andrew saying maybe the Eagles defense needs some blueberry juice to get their mojo going. I'm not sure anything can get that defense's mojo going. That defense should be much better than it is. And in saying that, things could get a lot worse, because there's a number of ways where things could get a lot worse for that defense. They could be like a team that's in their own division, the Washington Commanders. The offense is looking good. That defense, oof, maron, not looking good. Okay. Without further ado, let's get into our picks here for week 4, the 2024 NFL season. We're going to kick things off, of course, on Thursday Night Football. Yeah, LA, the active throat comment. Yeah, that one's gonna haunt me for a little while here, I think. So the Thursday Night Football game sees the Dallas Cowboys in New York taking on the Giants. The Giants getting off the schneid with their first win of the NFL season last week. Dallas has dropped 2 straight after winning their season opener. I still look at the Cowboys as like a better team, obviously, than losing 2 straight games would kind of have you believe or have you feel about them. And New York, I'm not willing to, roll out the welcome mat of the Giants have finally arrived just because they, won 1 game. This is still like bottom 5 offense, I would say, in the NFL up to this point. And Dallas, despite losing those 2 games in a row, Their offense looks fine. The offense is efficient. It's moving the ball. They're scoring points. The problem with Dallas is the defense has been, again, not that great. There's a lot of questionable defenses in that whole division, isn't there? I don't see it from the Cowboys on the defensive side of the ball right now, which is kind of a surprise given some of the pieces that they have. But in a matchup like this, like, we're not going to overthink this too much. Yes, it's a division game, and yes, weird things happen in division games. I do not expect the New York Giants to win consecutive games. I don't think they're there yet. It took a Malik Neighbors legacy game for them to win that game last week. So I just don't see lightning striking twice in that sense. We're going to grab the Cowboys here to kind of get off the schneid and get back on track here. Let's take the Cowboys on the road in New York to beat the Giants. Now, against the spread, the Giants are taking plus 5.5 here at home as a dog in a division game. Neither one of these teams have been good against the spread up to this point in the season, but Dallas, I do believe, has the offense to cover this number. It's under a touchdown. I realize it's a division game. I realize it's on the road. I'm going to lay the minus 5.5 here on the Cowboys because I feel pretty comfortable with them, like close to doubling up the Giants in this context. Total in the game set at 45.5 points, and this is a total Jekyll versus Hyde because Dallas has gone over in all 3 games. The Giants have gone under in all 3 games. If I'm taking the Cowboys to win and I'm taking them on the strength of their offense to cover that number, I might as well take the game to go over here as well. Let's go over the 45.5 point total in Dallas, New York. We're going to go 31-17 in favor of the Cowboys. Cowboys win, Cowboys cover. Give me the over on the 45.5 points. Now, this is another one of those weird weeks where they have 2 dueling Monday Night Football games. They're doing it for a second week in a row. So the way that we're going to do this is we're going to do 4 more games. Then we're going to do the Packers game. Then we're going to do 3. Then we're going to do Sunday Night Football. Then 4. And then the 2 Monday Night Football games. Clear as mud? Sudite? Sudite. Let's go to another division matchup here. The Atlanta Falcons playing host to the New Orleans Saints. Now, both of these teams were losers last week. It doesn't really change how I feel about the Saints. I still think the Saints are an absolute wagon. And I think just because they had one game where they weren't a wagon, which they very much were not in that game last week, it doesn't really change my perspective on them. I still feel like the Saints are certainly one of the elite offenses in football, but I think they're just an elite team on both sides. It does worry me a little bit that Alvin Kamara is battling a couple of injuries here. I ultimately don't think it's going to compromise his ability to play, but it does kind of give me pause when I'm looking at analysis for this game. However, what doesn't give me pause and what really has me kind of leaning against Atlanta here are the injuries on the offensive line. They've got multiple injuries along the O-line, including their starting center, Dahlman, who they just put on IR, and they're going to be without him for 4 games. I think they have an injury to one of their tackles as well, isn't it? McGrady? McGarry. So look, multiple injuries on the offensive line. It usually spells bad news, especially the center. So I really got to lean on the Saints here. I think the Saints bounce back in a big way. Let's take New Orleans on the road in Atlanta to actually upset the Atlanta Falcons. And this line has been really interesting to me because it opened at -1.5 and it's currently sitting at -2.5, which means the line is moving in Atlanta's direction. This is another game where I think the wrong team is the favorite. So I'm more than happy to say, like, okay, I think the better team's getting plus money and getting points, might as well take it. So I like the Saints to win, and I'll take the Saints to cover that +2.5 against the spread. Total in the game set at 42.5. Another one that's kind of a coin flip. The Saints have hit 2 overs already this year. Atlanta has been under in all 3 of their games. I like this to go over. Again, I'm going to lean on that Saints offense, and I do think the Saints defense is going to have an excellent game, especially rushing the passer with a pretty suspect O-line due to injuries. So let's go over the 42.5 point total. I'm going to go like a 27-20, still a competitive division football game. Saints win. Saints cover the +2.5 over the 42.5 point total. Let's go to Chicago now, where the Bears, winless in their last two games, play host to the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams, a team that finally picked up their first win of the season last week, and good for them. They're still dealing with that, just a litany of injuries, especially on the offensive side. That team cannot get Puka Nacua, especially, back fast enough. Like Cooper Kupp, when he comes back, he's still going to need a few weeks, I think, to ramp up. I think when Puka ultimately does come back, he should be pretty close to 100% ready to roll when he does. That offense cannot get Puka back fast enough. But the Rams came up on the happy side of things last week. The Bears are losers of two straight, but the Bears defense is more than capable, I believe, of winning this football game. Yes, the Rams got the win last week. They're kind of average in general on the offensive side, of course, taking into account that they're dealing with those injuries. I really feel like this Rams defense could still actually go a little lower than it is. They're bottom 5 in the league in terms of yards allowed as well as points allowed. So as a scoring defense, as a total defense, they're bottom 5 in the league. It is pretty darn easy to move the ball and put up points on this Rams defense. Caleb, I don't think, has looked wonderful for the Bears. But one thing that I do think we're seeing is we're starting to see flashes of what that ceiling is going to be for Caleb Williams. And we've seen flashes of, I don't quite want to call it brilliance, but we've seen flashes that it's kind of turning the corner. And for everything I can say about the Bears, they are top 10 in offensive efficiency. Part of that is they don't get a lot of yards. That's the way this efficiency metric works. But for the points that they're scoring, like they're scoring points above the yardage that they're getting, which is the thing that you want to see in an offense. I think the Bears get this win here. They're 3-point favorites at home. Obviously, it helps that they're playing at home. Let's take the Bears at home to get the win over the Rams. I just don't quite think the Rams are there yet. On the line, Chicago laying the -3. The Rams have failed to cover twice against the spread this year. I think Chicago's just kind of treading water in a lot of instances. But I'm going to take them to lay this -3. I like them to win. It's the highest end of my small price to pay against the spread. So let's lay the -3 on the Bears. Total in the game set at 41 points. Rams have a pair of overs this year. Chicago's gone under in every game this year. I'm going to lean on their defense to get this under the 41-point total in LA Chicago. Let's go 20-16. Tight, competitive game that ultimately I think the Bears defense wins the day on. So 20-16, Bears win, Bears cover, under on the points. The Pittsburgh Steelers, one of the few unbeaten teams left in the NFL, are traveling to Indianapolis to take on a Colts team that, despite what was another fairly poor performance, I think, from Anthony Richardson, and he's left a lot to be desired this year, Indianapolis gets their first win of the season. They're a team that I really still don't know exactly what they are. I don't love what I've seen from them on the offensive side. Obviously, as somebody with Anthony Richardson as a dynasty quarterback, I haven't loved what the offense has done. I haven't loved what the defense has done, but in saying that, they've been one of those bend but don't break defenses where they've given up a lot of yards, but they haven't given up points commensurate with the yards that they've given up. So they've been an efficient defense, but man, they've been giving up a lot of yardage. On the other side, I know exactly what the Pittsburgh Steelers are. The Pittsburgh Steelers are, our offense is going to do just enough to get us over the hump because our defense is elite. Nobody can touch us on the defensive side. That's what the Steelers are saying to their opponents every single week. And for the first 3 weeks of the season, that's exactly what they've done. That defense has been undeniable in Pittsburgh for the first 3 weeks. I think that continues because, again, they're up against an opponent, even though they're on the road here, that I just don't really know what the Colts are. In addition to that, I was a little concerned about Najee Harris. I think he left, or he, at the end of last week's game, he was seen with his arm in a sling. And I was concerned about that, but it seemed like he was a full participant in practice today. So I'm not too worried about it. Let's take the Pittsburgh Steelers on the road in Indianapolis to get the win over the Colts. Now, against the spread, this wasn't the easiest call just when I looked at the spread because Pittsburgh's 3-0 against the spread. The Colts have covered twice against the spread this season as well. So just when I looked at the number, I was like, oh boy, like this is going to be kind of a coin flip. But then when I kind of really sat down and dug into it a little bit more, it's like, well, no. Like if it's only a point and a half, whichever team I like to win, like that. And I really feel good about the Steelers winning this game. So obviously, they're going to cover the minus 1.5 if they win this thing outright. This is also the most confident, one of the most confident totals that I have this week because between these two teams, they've hit 5 unders already this season. So I think points are going to be at a premium in this one. Let's take under the 40-point total. It's a very beatable number, but with the two teams involved, I got to take the under. Under 40 points in Pittsburgh, Indianapolis. Let's go Steelers 20, Colts 14. Steelers win, Steelers cover. Give me the under on the 40-point total. And then the last game we'll look at before we look at the Green Bay Packers game is the Denver Broncos in New York to take on the Jets. Okay. Broncos come into this game on the tail end of back-to-back road games. They were on the road last week. They did get their first win of the season last week, so good for Denver in that respect. Another team that I don't particularly know that we've seen exactly what they are, exactly what they're going to be this season. Offensively, they've struggled. They haven't moved the ball a ton. They haven't put a ton of points on the board. Their defense has been pretty darn good. It's tough to move the ball on them. They haven't been giving up a ton of points. But again, they're just kind of one of those teams in the middle where one good or bad performance makes their numbers look great or makes their numbers look terrible. So I think we're still waiting to see what the true Denver Broncos are this season. Another instance where I think we know exactly what the New York Jets are. I think they're a fairly efficient offense, which is not a surprise with Aaron Rodgers. I think their defense is pretty darn good. It's tougher to move the ball, tougher to score on them. They also have the benefit of the long week because they did play on Thursday night. Now, the Patriots will have that same benefit as we get to them a little bit later in the show. But yeah, the Jets have the benefit of the long week, extra time to prepare. Aaron Rodgers at home. I feel pretty good about it. Let's take the Jets to get the win at home against the Broncos. Now, Chad just said it in the chat here. He feels good about the Jets to win, as do I. But the spread is a question mark, and it's a question mark because the Jets are laying minus 7.5. So you got to buy that extra hook above a full touchdown to cover against the spread. Some people are laying this number with no problem. I think the Broncos defense, I think one thing that we do know about the Broncos is their defense is probably good enough to cover this number. I think this is a closer game than that. So I'm going to go ahead, especially in a game where I think points are going to be at a premium with a total that's under 40. I think I got to take that plus 7.5. It's just, that's too many points for me to lay on the Jets as they are right now. So let's take the plus 7.5 on the Broncos. Total in the game set at 39.5 points. The Broncos have 2 unders so far this year. The Jets are kind of treading water. I think we're going to have to lean with an under on this one. I think a low 30, maybe even just barely scraping 30 is probably the order of the day here. So let's grab under 39.5 points in Denver, New York. Let's go Jets 17, Broncos 13. So Jets win, Broncos cover the 7.5, and give me an under on the 39.5 points. All right. What have I missed in the chat? Let's see. As an Eagles fan, no panic. Dallas straight up win, got that train going, won 6 in a row against the Giants. There you go. LA Rabbit concurs, Dallas over New York. Chad's taking the Saints plus 2.5. Excellent. Chad took the Rams at plus 2.5. So we're on opposite sides on that one. All right. I think we're doing fairly good so far. Now, let's look at the Green Bay Packers, who are going to be at home playing host to the Minnesota Vikings. And man, the Vikings are an undefeated football team without JJ McCarthy, which is a really, really big surprise to me. Not that I thought that, JJ McCarthy was going to lead them to an undefeated start, but man, for Sam Darnold to step in and lead this team to 3 consecutive wins to start the season, and not just that, but their defense has been dominant to start the season. I feel so good about where the Minnesota Vikings are right now as a team. And I say that as a diehard Packers fan. This is not the time that, as a Packers fan, I want to see the Minnesota Vikings. I want to see them later in the season where maybe, maybe they're not playing quite as well. But they've started the season very, very, very strong. Now, on the Packers side, they've won back-to-back games behind Malik Willis at quarterback, who has done exactly what he's needed to do in these 2 situations. And Matt LaFleur, chef's kiss, man. That guy has coached 2 incredible football games back-to-back to completely accentuate the positives of the quarterback that he has, run the football effectively, RPO with Malik Willis, and it's led to a pair of really solid wins for Green Bay, where their defense has also looked pretty good. So again, a matchup of, I think, 2 pretty damn good defenses here. I was a little concerned because, of course, Sam Darnold dealt with an injury last week, hit the injury report early this week. Now, Darnold's MRI did come back clean, so it doesn't look like there's any doesn't look like there should be any lingering issue there um, on Darnold's part. I think he should be 100% ready to roll. It hurts me. I would love to take the Packers in this spot. I don't think I can. There's a decent chance, at least, that Jordan Love is back this week. But just because Jordan Love comes back, if he does come back this week, just because he does, doesn't mean he's Jordan Love at 100%. And I think if you put Jordan Love out there at less than 100% against this Vikings defense right now, I don't think you're going to see the top of what he's able to do. I think it's going to be Malik Willis one more time. If it was me making the decisions, it would be Malik one more time. I probably would have put Jordan on IR. But anyway, that's, I guess, beside the point. I like the Vikings in this spot. I think Minnesota goes into Green Bay and gets the win. Again, I'm picking against my team here, but I've been so impressed with what the Minnesota Vikings have done. Also, something of a revenge game here, I guess, for Aaron Jones, who obviously comes back to Green Bay after being released in the offseason. Let's take Minnesota on the road in Green Bay to beat the Packers. These 2 teams have combined to cover against the spread 5 times already this season. So the 2.5 points could kind of go either way. But if I'm taking Minnesota to win, it's a small price to pay. Minnesota's the dog here. I looked at that like Minnesota was the favorite. Minnesota's taken the 2.5 points. I'm going to take them in the upset, take the plus 2.5. Total in the game set at 43.5 points. I was just talking up both of these defenses. Let's take an under here, under 43.5 points in Minnesota Green Bay. Let's go 23-17 in favor of the Vikings. So Vikings win, Vikings cover the plus 2.5. Give me an under on the points and give me a fun revenge game for the Packers later in the season. Now, we're going to do 3 games before we get to Sunday Night Football. The Philadelphia Eagles on the road in Tampa Bay, taking on a Bucs team that came up short last week. That's another instance where, kind of like New Orleans, it doesn't really taint what I feel about the Bucs. I still feel like Tampa Bay is a pretty damn good team, but they're a very low event team. Teams like they don't move the ball a ton and they don't give up a ton on the defensive side. So they're a low event football team. I would expect the offense to be better kind of than it has been over the last little bit, but I still feel like this is a very good football team. Whereas with the Eagles, they come into this game having won two straight. They come in on the tail end of back-to-back road games. How could they have won two straight? Am I wrong in saying that? That doesn't make any sense. They haven't. They won one straight. That makes more sense. So they come into this game having picked up their second win of the season. That's what I meant to say. Picked up their second win of the season. They're on the tail end of back-to-back road games, but again, they're a team that I don't really know what to make of them. They move the ball a ton. They get a ton of yardage on the offensive side. They don't have the points commensurate to how well they move the ball. They're also dealing with a number of injuries. And like last week, we saw Devonta Smith get hurt. We also saw Lane Johnson. Both of them, I think, had concussions. AJ Brown was already out. We think AJ Brown is coming back this week, but if they're going to be without Devonta Smith and without Lane Johnson, which when you're dealing with concussions, you generally assume the idea is they don't tend to play the next week. That's two pretty big pieces for the Philadelphia Eagles for a team that I already feel kind of iffy and wishy-washy on. I'm actually going to take the Bucks here. I'm going to take Tampa Bay at home. They're a marginal home dog at +2. I'm going to take the Bucks to win this game outright. Let's take Tampa at home to get a win over a somewhat depleted Eagles team. So obviously, I like Tampa Bay to win. Give me the +2. Total in the game set at 44. Both of these teams have a pair of unders already this season. Let's continue that. Let's stay under the 44-point total. Let's go like 23-20, maybe a walk-off field goal here for Tampa Bay. Bucks win, Bucks cover under the 44-point total with a 23-20 final. Really Too Rare, which is a name I haven't seen in the chat before, asks, how do you feel about Justin Fields and the Steelers? So we talked about the Steelers a little bit earlier. They're a team I've been pretty darn impressed with. I don't love everything I've seen from them on the offensive side. Like they've kind of struggled across the board offensively, but that defense is undeniable. That defense is good enough to win a lot of football games, including the game this week. I do think they go into Indy and beat the Colts. Let's go to Carolina now, where the Panthers get off the schneid and pick up their first win of the season. And they are playing host this week to a Cincinnati Bengals team that's on the short week, begging for answers at this point, still looking for their first win. A team that I am almost, it feels like I'm almost fully fading. I'm like this close to just being like a full fade on the Bengals at this point because it's just like I'm a victim of my own expectations because with the name and with what the concept of this team, the expectations were so high and they just have not been able to put it all together. Whereas, Carolina, they put it all together last week. They picked up their first win, I think, earlier in the year than a lot of other people would have considered them to be. There is a big problem, though, on the offensive side. They did just put Adam Thielen on IR. So he's going to be out for the next 4 weeks. That is a big piece of their offense. He's their number 2 receiver. He's a very reliable safety net for anybody. Now, big upgrade, obviously, and it was just mentioned by LA Rabbit in the chat. They made the move to Andy Dalton at quarterback. That offense is much more potent with Andy Dalton playing quarterback than it has been for Bryce Young. So it is definitely, something you have like they're a different offense. They're just a different offense than they've been earlier in the year. I don't know that the Cincinnati Bengals can be one of those teams that starts the season 0-3 and makes the playoffs. Like, I don't know if they're the 2018, what was it, the Houston Texans in 2018. I feel like if any team's got the pieces on the offensive side to kind of drag that corpse of a team kicking and screaming into the postseason, it might be Cincinnati. It feels like if not now, when? Because even though I will give you Andy Dalton controlling that offense is much better. That defense sucks. That defense is bad. They're bad across the board. It's easy to move the ball. It's easy to score. They're not efficient. It's not a problem playing the Carolina Panthers on the defensive side. If this thing gets into a shootout, which I feel like it might, I'm going to take the Cincinnati Bengals with their weapons. So let's take the Bengals on the road in Carolina, get their first win of the season, get things moving in the right direction. If not, like, when do you start talking about like firings happening? Because I mean, man, if Carolina wins that game and Cincinnati starts the season 0-4, that's it's got to be somebody's job, doesn't it? Like, with the expectations that that team has coming in, feels like it's got to be somebody's job if that's what happens. On the line, the Bengals are laying -4. I am going to go ahead and take that. I'm going to lay the -4. This number was bigger. Like Chad just mentioned, he took Carolina at +6. So this number is moving strongly in the Carolina Panthers direction. Who knows what it might be by kickoff? But I've got it at a +4. So I'm going to lay the points on -4 on the Cincinnati Bengals. Total in the game set at 47. I have no reason to believe this game doesn't at least get into the low 50s. So give me the over on the 47-point total. Going to go like 31-21 in favor of the Bengals. They get back on track. Cincy wins, Cincy covers over on the points. And this one here is going to be a quick one. The Jacksonville Jaguars, another team that has started the season 0-3 on a short week and on the tail end of back-to-back road games, has to go into Houston, take on a Texans team that lost last week, has not looked great to this point at the start of the season. CJ Stroud has not looked like CJ Stroud. They've been getting a lot out of Stephon Diggs. I will say that. Haven't been getting a lot out of Tank Dell. He's dealing with an injury. Nico Collins is still that guy for sure. But I feel like this is a Houston Texans team that is going to come into this game angry. I really do. They've only got like one cover, I think, against the spread so far this year. They're not scoring points that they're used to scoring from last year. I think this is an angry Houston Texans team, and I think they're going to take out that anger on a hapless Jacksonville Jaguars team that watching that game and part of it was like the game was in prime time, so there was such a spotlight on it. I feel like you look at that Jags team and it's like, what hope is there? Brian Thomas Jr., I guess, because that dude's really good. And like they've got pieces in the receiving game. Travis Etienne is better than he showed, but like it all comes back to Trevor Lawrence. And they're just not getting it out of Trevor Lawrence, and they're not getting it out of the defense either. I don't know. Maybe somebody can tell me, if there's like a Jags fan out there, what do you find hope in at this point with this team? Let's take Houston to roll in this game, and I think they will roll in this game. I think this is probably 3 possessions. Houston wins big. So -6.5. I have no problem laying the -6.5. Total in this game set at 45. Both of these teams have a pair of unders already this season. Don't know what I'm going to get out of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I'm going to go under on this and go like a 28-10, something like that. So, 3 possession game. Houston should win this thing comfortably. And there's some questions that are going to have to be answered in Jacksonville after this one and after the games they have coming up, because I don't feel super confident about them moving forward. So, yeah, 28-10. Houston wins. Houston covers under on the points. Okay. Mm. Sorry, folks. Got a little frog in my throat. All right. All right. Let's go to Sunday Night Football. The Baltimore Ravens at home playing host to the Buffalo Bills. So this is a marquee matchup in the AFC. This is one of the best games that the AFC has to offer, right? The Buffalo Bills off to a great start this year. They've won all three of their games. They are coming into this game on the short week, but the offense looks really good. The defense looks pretty darn good too. All cylinders appear to be firing for a Bills team that coming into this season, people had a lot of justifiable questions about. People were not sure what this Bills team was going to look like. But coming off that game on Monday night, we're going, oh, they look like the Buffalo Bills. We appreciate that. The Baltimore Ravens picked up their first win of the season last week. Obviously, are not starting the way that you would expect the Baltimore Ravens would have started this season. But in saying that, I think they move the ball fairly well as an offense, pretty darn well, actually. I think they're like top 5 in yardage. Just once again, they're not efficient with that yardage. They have not been scoring the points commensurate with the yards that they've been getting. And there's questions on the defensive side as well. I don't think that Baltimore Ravens defense is as good as people would probably have expected it to be starting this year. No real significant, like super significant injuries to talk about. So I mean, look, if you're looking at this game just kind of straight up, it's tough for me to say that the Baltimore Ravens shouldn't be a favorite in a home game. Because when you talk about home field advantage, historically, Baltimore's got one of the biggest. Like they have such a home field advantage historically. As it stands right now, with the way the first 3 weeks have gone, if Buffalo came into this game as the betting favorite, I wouldn't have been surprised. In saying that, Baltimore is the betting favorite. Baltimore is at -2.5. So it's one of those like, like them to win, small price to pay kind of things if you like them to win. I can't find the pathway to not take the Bills with the way they've started the season and the way Baltimore has started the season. I just don't have that faith, especially in the Ravens on the defensive side of the ball. I don't think they have what it takes right now to hold Josh Allen down and keep the Bills from winning this game. So let's take Buffalo on the road in Baltimore to pick up, stay undefeated, pick up their 4th win in 4 tries. Bills beat the Ravens. So obviously, since I like the Bills to win, give me the +2.5 on Buffalo. Total in this game set at 46. These two teams have combined for 5 overs to start the season. So let's go over the 46-point total. I think this gets into the 50s. Let's go like a 28-23, something like that. Buffalo wins, Buffalo covers, and give me the over on the points. All right, we're going to kind of speed round these last 4 games since you folks had to sit there for 2.5 minutes while I tried to clear my throat. Let's speed run some of this stuff. The Washington Commanders traveling to Arizona to take on the Cardinals. The Commanders are on a short week, having played on Monday night. They're winners of 2 straight games. So Washington, especially on the offensive side, starting to look pretty good under Jaden Daniels. Hey, he's really making use of those weapons. Arizona is a team that I like. I certainly like what they've done on the offensive side of the ball. Their defense is kind of middle of the road, but the offense has looked really, really good. But speaking of the offense, chances are they're going to be without Trey McBride coming into this game. But Washington likely going to be without Austin Eckler, and both for the same reason, concussions yet again. So Arizona probably take McBride out of the mix. Washington probably take Eckler out of the mix. And Eckler, for not being the starting running back, has been very useful to the Commanders so far this year in the receiving game and as a spell for Brian Robinson. So he's been good. I think I'm going to lean on the fact that, again, the Commanders are on the tail end of back-to-back road games here, which is definitely a thing, and the fact that it's a short week for them. You got a rookie quarterback trying to prep for a new team on a short week and having to stay on the road to do so. I like the Arizona Cardinals in this matchup. Let's get Arizona to get back on track here after the loss last week. Arizona at home beats the Commanders. Now, on the line, Arizona is laying -3.5. And this is where I think I'm actually going to acquiesce. I've flip flopped on this number a couple of times. At 3.5 points, I'm like, it's such a thin hedge. But I think where it's a game that, I mean, Washington could obviously, conceivably win this game outright. I think it's a competitive game, especially on the offensive side. I think I got to go ahead and hedge my bets on that one and take the +3.5 on the Commanders. It insulates me against the upset. And again, I flip flopped on this number, but I think that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. So Arizona wins the game, but Washington covers the +3.5. Total in the game set at 50.5 points. I think we're going to go over on this one. It's a fairly comfortable over for me as well. I'm going to go like a 30-27, something like that. Probably one on a last second field goal, but it's enough for Arizona to win the game, the Commanders to cover, and give me the over on the points. The New England Patriots, losers of 2 straight games, on the tail end of back-to-back road games, but having the benefit of the long week, travel to San Francisco to take on what is probably the angriest football team in the NFL, the San Francisco 49ers. I talked about Houston being angry. Let's look at San Francisco because, man, they're a team that right now, they move the ball so well. They're scoring plenty of points. The defense is really not playing up to San Francisco 49ers football. And I don't think I'm being mean in saying that, but especially the last week or two, that hasn't looked like the defense that we would have expected. The Patriots, I really like their defense. I think their defense is very good. Brock Purdy, assuming he's 100%, which I think he's going to be, Brock Purdy and the San Francisco 49ers send a message in this football game. They send a message saying, do not forget about us. Whatever you do not forget about the San Francisco 49ers. And we're going to show you exactly why. I think San Francisco cruises on both sides of the ball in this game. Give me the Niners at home to beat the Patriots. They're laying -10, which is a massive number. I don't like double-digit spreads as a matter of principle, but I think I'm going to lay these points. New England is doing nothing on the offensive side of the ball. They're doing nothing. That offensive line is not good. No wonder they're not giving Drake May the reps. That O-line's not good. The offense is not moving the ball. They're not scoring. I don't see them getting into double digits in this game. So the -10, I feel okay with it. Let's lay the -10 on San Francisco. Total in the game set at 40.5 points. It's going to be tough to hit when one team doesn't get to 10. So we're going to stay under on this total, under 40.5. Let's go 28-6 for San Francisco. I'll give the Patriots a couple of field goals. 28-6. Niners win. Niners cover the -10, under on the points. In a battle of two teams where I go, I don't know, the Cleveland Browns and the Las Vegas Raiders. Both of these teams were losers last week. Both of them are teams that I'm pretty darn close to a full-blown fade on. Cleveland has shown me nothing this year, I don't think. The Raiders are close to being a competent offense. The defense, I still have problems with. I think they still give up way too much on, in terms of yardage and as a scoring defense. Man, I don't. I have almost no feelings on either one of these teams. You could almost flip a coin in this one, I think, but I'm going to go ahead and lean on the team that's at home. Like, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do, to go to Vegas and win a game. So let's take the Raiders at home to beat Cleveland. This line has been all over the place. Right now, the Raiders are laying -2. I like them to win. It's a relatively small price to pay. Let's go ahead and lay the -2. Total in the game set at 37.5. That's just such a beatable number. So I think I got to go over on that one. Over 37.5 points in Vegas, Cleveland. We're going to go like 24-17. I hesitate to say get this game over with as quick as possible, because there are people who are fans of both of these teams. And I understand that. From my perspective, I'm just like, what are we even doing here with either one of these teams? But 24-17 is the final. Raiders win. Raiders cover. Over on the point total. Let's move on. And the last game we're going to look at before we look at those dueling Monday Night Football games is the Kansas City Chiefs. Started the season at 3-0, but on the tail end of back-to-back road games, traveling to Los Angeles to take on a Chargers team that has been ultra impressive on the defensive side of the ball. But boy, oh boy, are they dealing with injuries. So, Kansas City, they've started the season 3-0. The offense is playing fairly well. They're pretty efficient. They don't move the ball like they have in years past, but man, this team is still lethal in the red zone and lethal at putting points on the board. This offense is no less potent than it has been over the last few seasons. The Chargers, offensively, they don't move the ball a ton. They score okay, but they've really been riding on the back of a very solid defense that is top 5 in the NFL in defensive efficiency, as well as scoring defense, and top 10 in terms of total defense. They don't give up a ton of yardage. They're giving up very little on the scoreboard. They've really been riding with the run game and with that defense. But this is where we look at the ugly history of Bridgewater's finest and the Chargers. The Chargers are my kryptonite. I can never, for the life of me, get a proper read on the Los Angeles Chargers. I just can't do it. When I think they're awful, they become the 19-1 Patriots. When I think they're incredible, they look like they're not even playing the same sport. Like, I cannot get a read on the Chargers. Here's the only read I've ever been able to get on the Los Angeles Chargers. Are you ready for it? This is big inside baseball for me. When Joey Bosa is hurt, their entire defense collapses. Joey Bosa is such a linchpin for them on the defensive side. He's like Superman for the rest of that defense. And when he's not out there, it's a different football team. There may be no singular player who has a bigger impact on a team. Maybe Max Crosby, maybe Myles Garrett. They're in the same conversation. But Joey Bosa for the Los Angeles Chargers, his availability some weeks literally dictates whether they're going to show up on time or not. And right now, poor Mr. Bosa is dealing with a hip injury. I would be leaning out, not only on him, but Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater as well. That's two big pieces of the offensive line. Chad just mentioned it in the chat that Justin Herbert, he is also banged up. He's not at 100%, dealing with the ankle and foot and plantar fascia and everything that he's been dealing with. The Chargers are the walking wounded. So I can at the same time be super impressed with what they've done defensively and also say, I don't think they have a hope in hell in this game. I really don't. So let's go ahead and take the Chargers here. And I think the Chargers probably win this game big because I get the feeling that Justin Herbert probably doesn't finish this game. I'd never wish injury on anybody. Just reading the tea leaves here a little bit. On the line, the Chargers are taking +7.5, and normally in a division game, I would look very heavily at taking that number. But earlier today, that was 8.5. And if I'm going to get that kind of line movement in the direction of the Kansas City Chiefs, making it easier for the Chiefs to cover, I'm going to lay those points. I'm going to lay the -7.5 on Kansas City. Total in the game set at 39.5 points. Pretty darn beatable number. I actually think the Chiefs probably get into the 30s themselves. So let's go like a 30-13, something like that. Chiefs win, Chiefs cover. Give me the over on the 39.5 point total. So all we've got left are those two Monday Night Football games. But before we talk about either of those, let's take a peek in the chat here and see what we've got. Herbert sore ankle. Oh, Martin, you were born in Oakland. Oh, that's really cool. Chad saying Chargers at +7.5. I took KC, never cover. I think they're gonna this time. Took the Raiders at +1, and they beat them 4 in a row. Very nice, very nice. Yeah, Purdy dealing with a sore back. So I don't know. I think he picked up that injury during the game last week, but like he didn't come out of the game. Like he finished the game in a losing effort, but still finished the game, I believe. So I'm not too concerned about it at this point. I'm watching it because he's one of my dynasty quarterbacks. So I'm keeping an eye on it. But as of right now, I assume he's going to play. LA Rabbit says Andy Dalton looked like a stud in week 3. You bet he did. Like what a complete turnaround for that offense. Let's see. Justin's Chad made a comment there about Justin Fields fitting in with Pittsburgh. I think he is. I think between the two quarterbacks they have in that room, I think Justin Fields is probably the guy they should be sticking with. All right. Monday Night Football. First Monday Night Football game we're going to look at is between the Tennessee Titans and the Miami Dolphins, two teams that fit my criteria for hard fade. So, what's a boy to do when two of your hard fades are playing each other? Dolphins have lost 2 straight. Tennessee has not won a game yet this year, have at times looked terrible, and at times looked like they deserved a lot better. What I will say, the Miami Dolphins are dealing with multiple injuries. It's across the offense, it's across the defense, and that includes their new starting quarterback, Skylar Thompson, dealing with a rib injury. So is this going to be Tim Boyle? Is this going to be somebody else whose name I can't even come up with? I tell you what it's going to be. It's going to be the Tennessee Titans. I think Tennessee has the only unit in this game that I can feel confident in, and that's their defense. Because even though they're giving up more on the scoreboard than they should, this is a defense that is very good at limiting movement in the opposition. And yes, Miami's got the weapons, but if they don't have a quarterback that can use them, we start seeing things like we saw last week where, Jalen Waddle was almost non-existent. And Again, you can have all the weapons in the world, but you also got to be able to use them. And I just don't think they've got the quarterback in the room right now to use them until hopefully at some point Tua comes back. I'm going to take the Tennessee Titans on the road in Miami to upset the Dolphins. Right now, it's still an upset. This line has been flip flopping for hours. When I looked at it, the last I looked at it before I went live, I got it at Miami -1. So give me Tennessee plus the single point. Total in the game set at 36.5. This game might hit a low 30. So I feel pretty good about an under here. Under 36.5 points in Tennessee, Miami. Let's go Titans 17, Miami 14. So, Chad in the chat, field goal wins this game. You pick for me. There you go. 17-14 Titans. They win. They cover. Under on the points. All right. The last game of the week. The Seattle Seahawks in Detroit taking on the Detroit Lions. Lions picking up their second win of the season last week. The Seattle Seahawks off to a 3-0 start. Seattle's been pretty darn impressive here to start the year, and it's been across the board. The offense has been pretty good, moving the ball well, putting points on the board. Their defense has been excellent. This is as good a Seattle defense as I feel we've seen since, dare I say it, the Legion of Boom. I think this is as good a Seahawks defense as we've seen since then. The numbers are there. The results are there. Geno Smith's got that offense moving. And the defense is playing well and winning them games. When you look at Detroit, I feel like Detroit is the story of a team that is not quite where I think most people think they should be. They move the ball really well. They're not scoring near the points to this point in the season that they should be with how well they move the ball. They have a problem finishing. They're one of the 5 least efficient offenses in the NFL through the first 3 weeks. Defensively, I don't really have any questions about them. They don't give up a ton, either in total or on the scoreboard. So that defense has been playing well. I got question marks about the offense. I have no question marks when it comes to the Seattle Seahawks. I like Seattle to go into Detroit and beat the Lions. That's how much confidence I have in this Seahawks team. Seattle goes into Detroit, despite the fact that historically they're not a great road team. Seattle goes into Detroit, gets a statement win on Monday Night Football against the Lions. On the line, Detroit is laying -3.5. I like Seattle to win. Give me the +3.5 on the Seahawks. Total in the game set at 45.5 points. Detroit has gone under in all 3 of their games this year. Seattle's been kind of hit and miss. Let's look at an under here. I think it's the Seahawks defense that ultimately keeps them in this game, and it leads to a game-winning field goal. Seahawks win it 23-21. Seattle wins. Seattle covers +3.5. Under on the point total, just barely under. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Those are the picks for Week 4, 2024 NFL season. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch the show. I appreciate it as always. That's it for me, Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, and we will see you again for week number 5. All right, there we go. The podcast version of the show is now done. So now we're in Bridgewater's Finest after hours. So yeah, those are the picks. That's how I feel about week 4. And what do you guys think? What's the pick that you love? What's the pick that you hate? Is there something that stood out that you loved and something that stood out that you hated? The sound and all is good, no issues. Chad, I appreciate you so much, my friend. Martin, I wouldn't be surprised with the Seahawk victory. Excellent. We like to hear that. Ballsy picks Seattle over the Lions. Yeah, that's true. I did definitely go back and forth on that a couple times. Um, and again, I feel so bad because since that dude came into my chat in, I think, week 2, when I picked against the Lions, and he was like, "We're the best team in the league. Keep doubting us. Keep da da da." Ever since then, I don't think I've picked with the Lions because I'm pretty sure I took Arizona to beat them last week. So I feel bad. That guy probably thinks I'm doing it on purpose. I'm really not. I still have question marks about that Lions team, and I don't think we've seen that virtuoso um, Motor City Dan Campbell Detroit Lions win yet. I'm sure that's coming. You have to assume it has to be coming at some point. I don't think we've seen it yet, but we've seen Seattle have great success so far this season. So I feel pretty good about them. Kansas City don't cover. Eh. No, I know what you mean, Chad. Like a division game, I probably shouldn't be laying that many points. It's a lot of the time it tends to not work out all that well. But I feel really confident. And again, with the litany of injuries that the Chargers have, I don't know what level of football team they're actually going to be this week, especially the injuries on the O line. That's a big problem. We'll win, all good. There we go. All right, folks, that is going to do it for this week's stream. Thank you so much once again, especially for anybody that's ever able to pop in and catch the streams live. I can never thank you guys enough. KC only team to get to 4-0. Did I do that? No, Pittsburgh gets to 4-0. Minnesota gets to 4-0. Buffalo gets to 4-0. They all get to 4-0. Because I think there's 5 teams that are 3-0, right? And no, I've got all of them winning. You're gonna give me a complex here, man. All right. Pittsburgh 2 and Buffalo. Maybe not Min. Um that was a tough one for me too, because of course I'm a Packers fan. So I really obviously want Green Bay to win that game, and I will be more than happy to be wrong about that pick. Um I've just been very impressed with the Vikings to this point in the season. Okay. Thank you so much once again for popping in, being able to check out the show live. I like to be in this time slot on Wednesday nights, if at all possible. I like to stay here. If I'm ever not going to be here, I'm going to let you all know on Twitter at blockbuster_guy. So make sure you keep an eye on that to see if there's any changes in the stream scheduling. If not, I'm really liking doing Wednesday evenings. I think we'll be sticking with it. Thank you so much for watching the show this week. Enjoy the games. Begin tomorrow night, and we will see you again for week 5.